Advertising is no stranger to societal impact. Most of what we believe is a product of media advertising and marketing. This is one of those statements that can ring hollow when it isn't put into perspective. So let me do that. When we think about advertising, it's very easy to immediately think of overt displays of marketing. An example in this case would be YouTube, since if you're watching this video, you're probably on it. YouTube is a platform that has ads integrated into videos, before videos, after videos, surveys. We're allowed to choose where in videos you get ads. But these are overt and don't speak to the effectiveness of these ad campaigns. Let's go back in time. The diamond engagement industry was almost single-handedly kickstarted by an advertising campaign. In 1947, De Beers pioneered the slogan, "A diamond is forever." The purpose of the marketing campaign, in their own words, was to conflate diamond rings with love. It marketed an idea, not the diamond or brand. Now when you think of an engagement ring, more often than not, you're probably thinking of a diamond ring. It's become ingrained into our culture and it's the first thing you think about. And this is a small scale example of the very subtle ways our culture is framed around advertising. Do you go on coffee breaks? Did you know that the phrase coffee break is a product of advertising? In the mid-50s, a Pan American Coffee Bureau ad campaign encouraged workers to find some midday relaxation with the line, "Give yourself a coffee break and get what coffee gives you." Before long, morning and afternoon breaks became commonplace and occasionally protected by the law. The break even became something people bargained for. In 1964, the United Auto Workers Union threatened to go on strike unless the coffee break was written into their contract. In 1937, the coffee boards of 7 Central and Southern American countries to create the Pan American Coffee Bureau to promote coffee in regions of the South of USA. This organization had a profound impact on American coffee culture and is credited with making the term coffee break a household word and a business standard practice through a $2 million ad campaign that began in 1952. The organization even hired a psychologist to help them market to effectively the mainstream, middle-class Americans. The manager of the bureau went on to say, "Within a short space, the coffee break has become so thoroughly publicized that the phrase has become part of our language." Even speaking personally, at work, whether it's a suggestion or self-imposed, people say, "I'm gonna go on a coffee break." People will offer you coffee as a token gesture when they think you're tired or you might need something to keep going. To make this point even simpler, it doesn't matter that you don't want to play Raid Shadow Legends. What matters is that you know what it is. I know it's an MMORPG. And this isn't an ad, I just know that because they give the same script to everyone, right? I haven't read a script, for Raid Shadow Legends, but that, you know that because it's been said so many times. These are examples of simple things that we don't ever think why we say or engage with, but are actually products of a larger advertising machine. And when advertising is truly effective, it's self-actualizing. It becomes ingrained into the culture. And if advertising has such a profound influence on our culture, then what part of our culture is actually naturally manifesting? And can that be weaponized by people who control advertising and the media we consume?
901 Shelby Drive, look alive, niggas came up on this side, now they on the other side. Oh well, fuck them dawg, we gon' see how hard they ride. I get racks to go outside, and I split it with the guy. We up on the other side, niggas acting like we tied. I've been gone since like July, niggas acting like I died. They won't be expecting shit when Capo go to slide, cause I told them that we put that shit behind us, but I lied. Hey, look who I'm around, man. If I fucked up, I'ma be downtown, man. Full flow down, man. That's if I get caught, man. Push me to the edge, so it really ain't my motherfucking fault.
Propaganda is advertising designed to influence public opinion. The way this can manifest can be really simple and innocent, and it can also be really messy. Let's take Marvel movies. Marvel movies has been largely criticized for their military propaganda. Many movies go for approvals from the US military, going as far to be directly supported by them. The general deal is Marvel gets to use real military hardware, film on military bases, and hire real soldiers as extras, while the Department of Defense gets to approve the final script. In other words, Marvel gets tons of stuff to make production easier and cheaper, while the military gets to edit out anything that doesn't make them look good. And this isn't even exclusively a Marvel situation. Many companies and films end up taking similar deals. In the original Iron Man, the script featured a military man claiming the soldiers would kill themselves for an opportunity he had access to. That line ran afoul of a very real suicide problem among former soldiers that the military would rather keep quiet, so it was cut. This even extends to the Pentagon having the final approval for certain scripts. But propaganda isn't just in film, it's in all forms of media. Video games. I could go the Call of Duty route and talk about military propaganda again, but I actually want to talk about Ace Attorney. It's a series that's near and dear to me. It was the foundation of my channel and it's the reason I began to work on my own video game. Ace Attorney is a series that, intentionally or not, is very clearly an exaggerated version of the Japanese legal system. I don't think that's up for debate. And many of these games, specifically the early ones, do a lot to critique it thematically. Not this scathing satire, obviously, but it's a clear thematic undertone that extends to every single one of the games. My favorite being Apollo Justice, which takes a very firm stance on how easy it is to manipulate the system and why the legal system should be changed. The police department in Japan partnered up with the Ace Attorney series to create a series of propaganda posters to curb marijuana usage by young people. This is going to be really important moving forward because it speaks to how propaganda can be insidious and seeks to use people's attachment to existing media to allure them into thinking in certain ways. A bit of research and you find that Capcom have been collaborating with local governments and the police department since 2009. 2013's Dual Destinies would go on to disregard Apollo Justice's prior critiques of the legal system and in many ways validate its very premise, placing faith in how the system is run, a sharp contrast to the prior ideas. Now, I'm not interested in throwing out conspiracies, of course. Ace Attorney isn't the biggest series in the world, but do I think the most prolific video game about the legal system is immune to propaganda? No. Propaganda isn't just pushing an agenda through advertising, but using our attachment to existing media to facilitate it. Despite the examples above, not all forms of propaganda are inherently problematic. Everyone is ultimately going to have a perspective or theme ingrained into the media they create. But in understanding how thoroughly we are products of what we consume, we can make sense of the ways in which this has or could be manipulated by those with power. I'm gonna get this out of the way. The war on drugs. Say it in every video, but hopefully this gives the necessary context for why it's so significant. Is the government manipulating the media in order to criminalize political opposition? Black people are still criminalized and make up more arrests and stop and search warrants on average. I'm gonna go a bit crazier briefly. Even the idea of black capitalism and buying power is a product of marketing. John H. Johnson got the idea from Richard Nixon, same person who did this, by the way. You know what I mean? I don't know. And assured white investors that they would make more money including black people in their marketing and pushing this middle class goal as an attainable prospect than excluding them from it. The sus law was integrated and targeted primarily black people, and when the police commissioner was asked why, he said, "It's because they're overrepresented in robbery and theft." People get their ideas and associations from the media, and if the media does nothing but push a specific image and idea of blackness, then people will internalize that as truth. And it's of one exaggerated and exoticized perspective. The byproduct of this is that many people don't know how to make sense of their blackness outside Black American identity, through the similarities and making sense of the differences. Commercial black identity is American, and most of the media we consume on a global scale is American. And that's because America is a money and media powerhouse. If you want to make money, and I'm telling you this because YouTube counts with this too, you better know how to appeal to Americans. And the framework that dictates that is monetary. It's not that the black American experience is just inherently more engaging or tragic or whatever. And the byproduct of that I've noticed is other black people in the diaspora feeling alien to the experiences in media in African American work sometimes. I don't wholly agree with it, but I've seen it. Because again, according to the media, what is black identity but American? An idea of what black American identity is.
Don't insult my music.
We ride just some gangster shit. Pop that in, man. Captain don't want to hear that Zimbabwe, wah shit. Get that shit out of here. Whatever, get it the fuck out of here. I'm the captain.
That's the power of media and advertising. That some people feel the only way to make sense of their blackness is through an African American lens. Because where they're from, there isn't a lot of mainstream media around the black French or black people in Italy. And that's not a cultural thing. That's how monetary media dictates what art is created. Recently I put out a tweet about how I'm not crazy about the length of modern YouTube videos. The big reason for this is monetary. More ads can be played on longer videos and they're rewatchable because most people don't sit through all of them at once. This has created a culture of YouTube videos where everything has to be a 1 to 3 hour diatribe on any given subject. The response to this was naturally that many people enjoy that content, and I do too, as background noise. But to what extent is that naturally manifesting? Or have we just been conditioned to like what YouTube likes to push on the algorithm since it makes them more money? Given some of the things that we've discussed before, I lean to the latter. If you want to know why YouTubers and streamers are targeted for sponsorships, it's because of the extent of their influence. They're not really looking at your content, but instead, how much money you can make them. Money doesn't have any value, it's the ability it has to influence. It's why the government were afraid of certain black political groups. They were influential, and that's the real power. And you can weaponize that. You can shift the money. All of your YouTube content is controlled and framed around engagement. People don't even curse in their videos because if they did, they'd get limited ads. And YouTube doesn't want to push anything that doesn't make them money. So the algorithm forces them to conform because nobody wants their video to go unseen. If this lengthy section has communicated anything to you, I hope it's that what you think is standard probably isn't organic. What you think is natural is a product of conditioning. And what you think is real is a product of advertising. And that can be both scary and, in some ways, comforting.
Every day just kind of drifts off into an orange light. It's too bright for my migraine. My eyes are swollen from crying at night. But familiarity can be a novelty.
Advertising can tell you a lie, and it will become so ingrained into society that you'll believe it as an accepted part of reality. The scariest part isn't that advertising is the driving force of our culture, somewhat. Is that the familiarity is so ingrained, it's comforting. Many of my own views are a product of propaganda and advertising, and I'm so comforted by them that even with that knowledge, I'm not wholly willing to let go. And I don't think that should be the expectation. I just think it's important we're aware of it, and not be afraid to change. To not cling on to how you make sense of the world because it's always been your reality. Even our language has flaws. We don't even know what the gender-neutral term for an aunt or uncle is. Our ideas of masculine and feminine traits are rooted in patriarchy. Whiteness is pure, blackness is evil. Even our language has failed us, but it's only in our ability to recognize that we can continue to grow and develop it. If you find yourself viewing something as natural because it's always been tradition and it's always been said, it's important to question why. Tradition just means something is old, like your favorite nail art or worn out loafers. It's comforting, but it still might need to change. We influence whether we want to or not, whether we have a platform or not. And if we want to create tangible change in the way our media influences us, it's important we understand the power of influence so we can change it and the world around us.
Got these other bitches shook, yeah.